My phone was slipping from my hands when the small child grabbed onto my leg and screamed, "Help me please." I froze in shock because this random kid had never seen me before in his life. But when I looked up, two teenage boys were violently yanking his backpack while shoving him around. Something inside me snapped instantly. I sprinted toward them, grabbed one boy's wrist firmly, and said in a cold, authoritative voice, "Let go, right now." The tone I used carried an unexpected authority that clearly caught them off guard. One of them tried to glare at me defiantly, but when I tightened my grip slightly on his wrist, discomfort flooded his face. "Let's go, man. This isn't worth the trouble," his friend muttered nervously. They reluctantly released their hold and ran off into the distance. The child was trembling behind me, his small body shaking with residual fear. I crouched down to his eye level, making myself less intimidating. "Hey, it's all right now. They're gone and won't bother you again." His brown eyes were filled with tears, his lower lip quivering uncontrollably. Thank you so much, mister," he stammered through hiccups. I offered a gentle smile, pulling a tissue from my pocket to carefully wipe his tear-streaked face. "What's your name, buddy?" I asked softly, trying to calm him down. "Alan," he managed to say between shaky breaths. "Alan, where are your parents right now?" I glanced around the park, searching for any adults who might be frantically looking for him. He thought for a moment, then lifted his wrist to show me an expensive-looking smartwatch displaying a location tracker. "My dad said to wait here. He had to meet someone. It was really important, so this wasn't a case of an irresponsible parent abandoning their child. Something urgent must have come up." I guided Alan to a nearby bench and sat beside him. He slowly began to calm down, starting to talk about dinosaurs with surprising enthusiasm, clearly attempting to distract himself from what had just happened. I listened attentively, genuinely interested in his innocent chatter, when suddenly I heard heavy, hurried footsteps approaching rapidly. "Alan!" A tall man was rushing toward us, his designer suit slightly disheveled, dark hair messy as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly in frustration, and his face showed a complex mixture of panic and guilt. "Dad!" Alan immediately jumped to his feet. The man swept Alan into his arms, lifting him up while frantically checking every inch of him for injuries. "Are you hurt anywhere? What happened?" "I was only gone for—" He suddenly noticed me standing there. His expression instantly became guarded, almost suspicious. "Who are you exactly?" His tone was protective, bordering on accusatory. I stood up casually, keeping my hands in my pockets to appear non-threatening. "Red. I was just jogging through here when he saved me." Alan interrupted excitedly, his earlier fear completely forgotten. "Dad, you weren't here and two big boys were pulling my bag and pushing me really hard. This man made them run away." The man's entire demeanor shifted dramatically. Guilt flashed across his face first, followed immediately by immense relief. "God. Alan, I'm so incredibly sorry. I should have—" He took a deep breath, composing himself before looking directly at me. "I'm Victor, Alan's father. I honestly can't thank you enough for what you did." He extended his hand toward me. I shook it. His grip was firm and warm, but he held on slightly longer than necessary, as if making absolutely sure I was real and not some figment of his stressed imagination. "I was coming from the hospital," Victor suddenly began explaining, as though he needed to justify his absence. "My assistant had a sudden accident on her way to pick up Alan. I was handling the emergency situation and thought Alan would be safe here with the watch tracker, but guilt washed over his features again like a wave. I should have been here with him. This is entirely my fault." I could see he was genuinely shaken by what could have happened. "You're here now. That's what truly matters," I said calmly, trying to ease his obvious distress. Alan tugged on Victor's sleeve insistently. "Dad, can this man come with us? Please? He's really nice and I like him." My face involuntarily warmed with embarrassment at the unexpected invitation. "Oh, Alan, I really don't think—" "Please read," Victor interrupted, and this time his eyes held a sincere, almost desperate request. "At least let me buy you coffee. Lunch perhaps? I owe you that much at the very least. Honestly, I'd feel significantly better knowing I properly thanked you." Something in his tired yet hopeful eyes made me pause and reconsider my automatic refusal. There was a vulnerability there that was hard to ignore. a genuine gratitude that went beyond simple politeness. All right. I heard myself agreeing before I could think it through. Victor visibly relaxed, his shoulders dropping as he released a breath he'd apparently been holding. Thank you for giving me this chance. Alan beamed happily, already chattering about his favorite restaurant as Victor gently set him down. As we started walking toward the parking area, I couldn't help but glance at Victor's profile, the strong jawline, the worry lines around his eyes that suggested he carried far more responsibility than most people his age. This was how it started, with one simple agreement that would forever change the trajectory of my ordinary life. As we reached Victor's car, Alan was already planning what he wanted to order, his earlier trauma seemingly forgotten in the resilience that only children possess. Victor opened the car door for me, a small gesture that felt oddly significant. Our eyes met briefly over the roof of the vehicle, and something unspoken passed between us, a connection that neither of us could quite name yet, but both of us felt deeply. I slid into the passenger seat, the leather cool against my back, and watched as Victor carefully buckled Alan into his booster seat with practiced efficiency. The care he showed, the gentle way he adjusted the straps and kissed Alan's forehead, it revealed a devoted father who clearly put his son above everything else. As Victor settled into the driver's seat and started the engine, I found myself wondering what I'd just gotten myself into. This was supposed to be a simple jog through the park, maybe grab some groceries on the way home, work on a few design projects in the evening. Instead, I was heading to lunch with a CEO and his adorable son, my heart beating slightly faster than normal for reasons I didn't want to examine too closely just yet. Victor's car radiated understated luxury. A sleek black sedan with pristine leather seats that somehow remained impeccably clean despite clearly being used regularly for transporting a young child. We arrived at an upscale family cafe that perfectly balanced cozy warmth with elegant sophistication. The moment we stepped inside, Alan immediately dashed toward the kids' activity corner where coloring supplies and toys were neatly arranged, apparently completely recovered from his earlier ordeal. Victor and I settled into a window seat, an awkward silence hanging between us like a tangible presence. He picked up the menu but maintained direct eye contact with me as he spoke. So Reed, what do you do professionally? His question was casual but his gaze was intensely focused. Freelance graphic designer. I handle logos, branding work, occasionally full web design projects, I explained, relaxing slightly into the comfortable chair. Creative work, he observed, and I could detect genuine interest rather than polite small talk in his tone. That must be quite fulfilling. Being your own boss, setting your own schedule. It definitely has its advantages. What about you? I already suspected the answer but wanted to hear it from him. Directly. Victor offered a slight smile. Tired around the edges but authentic. I run a software development company. We focus on enterprise solutions, primarily business-to-business applications. So he really was a successful CEO. That explained the expensive watch, the luxury car, the overall polished presence that seemed almost natural on him. However, Victor wasn't boastful or arrogant about his achievements. If anything, he seemed to downplay his success, as though it was merely what he did rather than who he was. Our conversation began to flow more naturally as initial awkwardness faded. We discovered shared interests in underrated indie films, debated the merits of various music genres, and laughed about bizarre food combinations we'd each tried. Victor surprised me with his dry sense of humor, which was completely unexpected given his serious, somewhat stern exterior. Alan periodically bounced over to show us his artistic creations. Crude but charming drawings depicting me as a superhero with a cape, Victor as a king with a crown, and himself as a prince. Each time Victor's expression softened noticeably, his love for his son evident in every glance. But then the conversation hit a more serious note when Victor quietly revealed, Alan's mother isn't part of our lives anymore. It's been just the two of us for 3 years now. Sharing such personal information so soon felt intimate, almost too much for a first meeting. I nodded carefully, choosing my words with consideration. That must be incredibly challenging, balancing demanding work with being a single parent. Victor's gaze met mine directly, unflinching. It is challenging every single day, but Alan makes every struggle worthwhile. He's become my anchor, my reason for pushing through difficult times. The raw honesty in his voice made my chest tighten unexpectedly. Behind his carefully constructed professional walls was an exhausted but devoted father doing his absolute best. As lunch concluded and I prepared to leave, Victor hesitated before speaking. "Reed, may I have your contact number?" The powerful CEO suddenly seemed almost uncertain, vulnerable even. "Alan will definitely want to show you more of his artwork, and I would genuinely like to stay in touch, if that's acceptable to you." I gave him my number without hesitation because truthfully I didn't want this unexpected connection to end either. There was something about Victor and Alan that had already begun to feel significant. That night at precisely 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. "Alan drew a picture of us at the park today. He absolutely insisted I send it to you. Thank you again for everything you did, Victor." Attached was a photo of a crayon drawing showing stick figures, Alan in the center, with Reed and Victor on either side. All with oversized smiling faces. Something about that simple image made my heart skip several beats. I found myself staring at it longer than necessary, studying the way Alan had drawn us together like a unit, like we belonged side by side. I typed back quickly, "He's genuinely talented. Maybe we could grab coffee again sometime." The response came almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting by his phone. "How about tomorrow?" I sat alone in my modest apartment that night, unable to stop looking at that childish drawing. Victor's tired eyes kept replaying in my mind, along with Alan's innocent smile and enthusiastic chatter about dinosaurs. Something was shifting inside me, some fundamental change in perspective I couldn't quite name yet. Part of me felt scared by how quickly I was becoming attached to these two people I barely knew. Another part felt curious, excited even, about where this might lead if I allowed myself to explore these unfamiliar feelings. I realized with sudden clarity that I was standing at a crossroads. I could politely distance myself now, maintain professional boundaries and keep my life simple and uncomplicated. Or I could lean into this strange new connection, accept Victor's invitation for tomorrow and see where this unexpected path might take me. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I kept imagining scenarios, conversations we might have, ways Alan might draw me into their small family unit. By the time dawn broke through my bedroom window, I'd made my decision. I would say yes to coffee tomorrow, yes to getting to know them better, yes to whatever this was becoming, despite my usual caution with new people. When morning finally arrived, I found myself checking my phone repeatedly, anticipating Victor's message about where and when to meet. My hands were slightly unsteady as I replied to his text suggesting a quiet cafe near his office. This felt like more than just a casual coffee meeting between acquaintances. There was an undercurrent of something deeper, something that both thrilled and terrified me in equal measure. I spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing what to wear, eventually settling on casual but presentable jeans and a button-down shirt that I hoped struck the right balance. As I headed out the door, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror and barely recognized the slightly nervous, anticipatory expression on my face. Who was this person getting worked up over coffee with someone I just met yesterday? But I couldn't deny the flutter of excitement in my stomach, the way my pulse quickened when I thought about seeing Victor again, about Alan's enthusiastic greeting I knew was coming. Whatever was happening here, whatever this connection meant, I was committed to finding out. No more overthinking, no more second-guessing. Just honest curiosity about two people who had unexpectedly walked into my life and somehow made everything feel different. As I walked toward the cafe, the morning sun warm on my face, I realized I was smiling without even meaning to. This was the beginning of something, though I couldn't yet comprehend just how significant it would become. The following week developed into an unexpected routine that surprised me with its naturalness. Victor began texting me regularly. Casual invitations for park visits where Alan could run freely. Museum trips to see dinosaur exhibits that made Alan's eyes light up with pure joy. Ice cream runs on warm afternoons where we'd debate flavor choices. I found myself consistently saying yes, unable to resist these small opportunities to be part of their world. Alan had officially declared me his favorite person, announcing it proudly to anyone who would listen. But the real transformation I noticed was in Victor himself. The changes were subtle at first, easy to miss if you weren't paying close attention. He remembered my coffee order perfectly, Caramel latte with extra foam, no sugar. When I casually mentioned work stress during one conversation, the next day he sent me a link to a motivational podcast he thought might help, along with a message saying he'd found it useful during his own difficult periods. These small gestures felt significant, like he was carefully weaving himself into the fabric of my daily life. One rainy evening, I found myself stranded at a bus stop, holding my laptop bag over my head in a futile attempt to stay dry. The sudden downpour had caught everyone off guard, and the bus was running late according to the digital display. Suddenly, a familiar black sedan pulled up directly in front of me. The window rolled down smoothly, revealing Victor with a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Get in, Reed. You'll catch pneumonia standing out there." I was soaking wet and surprised by his sudden appearance. "Victor? How did you even know I was?" "Alan wanted ice cream despite the weather. Pure coincidence that this happens to be your route home," he replied, but his eyes held a playful, knowing look that suggested otherwise. He had come specifically to find me, had perhaps even been tracking the weather and guessing I'd be caught without an umbrella. I settled into the car, immediately appreciating the warmth and shelter it provided. Alan was in the back seat, happily singing cartoon-themed songs completely off-key but with tremendous enthusiasm. Victor pressed play on the car's audio system, and soft classical piano music filled the space, calming, sophisticated, completely unexpected. "You listen to this kind of music?" I asked with genuine curiosity, having assumed he'd prefer something more contemporary or business-oriented. "It helps me decompress after particularly stressful board meetings and investor presentations." "Does it bother you?" His question was casual, but I sensed he actually cared about my answer. "Not at all. It's actually quite soothing, honestly." My response was genuine, and I noticed his shoulders relax slightly at my approval. We drove through the rain-slicked streets in comfortable silence, the kind that only develops between people who've grown genuinely at ease with each other. When we arrived outside my modest apartment building, Victor hesitated noticeably, his fingers drumming against the steering wheel in a nervous pattern. "Reed, I need to say something," he began, pausing to choose his words with obvious care. "I'm aware this has all progressed rather quickly, me reaching out constantly, inserting myself into your schedule. If it's becoming too much pressure." "You're not pressuring me at all," I interrupted quickly, wanting to reassure him before doubt could take root. "I genuinely enjoy spending time with both of you. It's become something I actually look forward to each day." Victor's shoulders visibly relaxed, tension draining from his posture. "That's a relief to hear, because Alan isn't the only one who genuinely looks forward to seeing you regularly." My breath momentarily caught in my throat at his admission. He'd said it casually, almost throwaway, but the underlying meaning was crystal clear to both of us. I began to exit the car, but Victor gently touched my wrist. A brief contact, warm and electric, sending unexpected sensations up my entire arm. "Wait just a moment. Tomorrow, Alan has his school's annual day celebration. It's a parent participation event with games and performances. Would you possibly consider coming with us?" His invitation hung in the air between us, weighted with implications neither of us wanted to explicitly state yet. "Come as what exactly?" I needed him to clarify what he was really asking. Victor's gaze held mine with intensity and sincerity that made my heart race. "As someone who has become genuinely important to both of us. Someone we want there." My heartbeat accelerated noticeably. "I would really like that. Count me in." Victor smiled then, not his usual tired, polite smile, but something genuine that reached his eyes, which normally carried such exhaustion. "Thank you, Reed. This means more than you probably realize." When I finally entered my apartment, the warmth from his brief touch still seemed to linger on my skin like a phantom sensation. I was beginning to fully realize that these feelings had moved far beyond casual friendship territory. The terrifying part wasn't the feelings themselves, but rather how much I didn't want them to stop growing. I had always been cautious with relationships, protective of my personal space and emotional boundaries. Yet here I was, eagerly anticipating tomorrow, already planning what to wear to a child's school event. That night, I lay awake, staring at my ceiling, replaying every interaction from the past week. The way Victor's eyes crinkled when he laughed at something Alan said, how he always made sure I was comfortable before attending to anything else. The casual touches that seemed to happen more frequently, a hand on my shoulder when making a point, fingers brushing mine when passing items. That brief wrist contact tonight that had sent electricity through my entire nervous system. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through our text conversation, rereading messages with new perspective. Every good morning text, every shared article about topics I'd mentioned enjoying, every photo of Alan's latest artwork, they all represented Victor actively choosing to include me in his tightly controlled life. For someone as busy and important as he clearly was, dedicating this much time and attention to someone he just met spoke volumes about his intentions. The realization both thrilled and terrified me in equal measure. What if I was reading too much into friendly gestures? What if his feelings were purely gratitude-based and I was projecting my own growing attachment onto innocent interactions? But then I remembered the way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Something intense and yearning in his expression that went far beyond simple thankfulness. The next morning arrived with surprising speed. I dressed carefully in casual slacks and a comfortable sweater, wanting to look presentable for the school event without appearing like I was trying too hard. As I locked my apartment and headed downstairs, nervous excitement bubbled in my chest. This felt like a turning point somehow. Like attending this event together would shift our dynamic in some irreversible way. Victor's car was already waiting when I stepped outside. Punctual as always, Alan's face pressed against the back window, waving enthusiastically the moment he spotted me. And Victor stood beside the car, leaning against it casually but watching me approach with an expression I was learning to recognize. Warmth, anticipation, something deeper he wasn't quite ready to name aloud yet. "Ready?" he asked simply as I reached him. "Absolutely," I replied, meaning it in ways that extended far beyond just today's event. The school's annual day was vibrant chaos incarnate. Streamers decorated every available surface of the auditorium. Excited children ran in coordinated mayhem, and enthusiastic parents clustered in animated groups discussing their kids' performances. Alan had grabbed both my hand and Victor's, holding them tightly as though we were precious trophies. He was displaying proudly. Several parents cast curious glances our way, their expressions ranging from confused to intrigued. One particularly elegant woman approached Victor with a warm, friendly smile lighting up her face. "Oh Victor, wonderful to see you. Is this Alan's other parent? I don't believe we've been formally introduced yet." My face instantly flushed hot with embarrassment at the unexpected assumption. Before I could stammer out an awkward correction, Victor responded with smooth confidence that surprised me. "He's family. That's what truly matters here." There was no hesitation in his voice, no stumbling over words or offering unnecessary explanations. Just a firm, definitive statement delivered with absolute certainty. The woman's smile widened genuinely, seemingly satisfied with that answer, and she gracefully changed the subject to discuss upcoming school fundraisers. But my heart continued racing frantically inside my chest, his words echoing repeatedly in my mind. We positioned ourselves near the front to watch Alan participate in the three-legged race, with his assigned partner. Victor's hand came to rest casually on my shoulder, warm, grounding, feeling completely natural despite the public setting. When Alan crossed the finish line first, pumping his small fists victoriously in the air, we both instinctively moved forward simultaneously to embrace him, lifting his small body between us in celebration. I became acutely aware of surrounding families smiling approvingly at the scene we presented, as though we perfectly embodied the picture of an ideal, loving family unit. The realization sent conflicting waves of warmth and anxiety coursing through me. Later in the afternoon, after Alan had run off to play elaborate games with his classmates near the playground equipment, Victor and I found ourselves standing in a quiet corner of the school corridor, away from the main crowd's noise and activity. "Thank you for being here today," Victor said softly, his eyes focused intently on my face rather than the festivities continuing around us. "Alan was absolutely ecstatic when he found out you'd agreed to come along." My response came honestly, without the careful filtering I usually applied to my words. "I'm genuinely happy to be here. This means something to me too." Victor turned to face me fully, deliberately closing what little distance remained between our bodies. His proximity made my pulse quicken noticeably. "Reed, there's something I need to tell you, and I can't keep it inside any longer." My stomach performed an uncomfortable flip of nervous anticipation. "What is it?" You're starting to worry me. His voice dropped lower, becoming vulnerable in a way I'd rarely heard from him. I haven't felt this genuinely content in years. Not since everything in my life completely fell apart. And that sense of peace, that feeling of things being right again, it's directly because of you. Your presence has somehow fixed something inside me that I couldn't repair on my own. No matter how hard I tried. Victor, I don't know what to... He quickly interrupted, slight panic entering his tone as though he feared he'd revealed too much. I'm not demanding anything from you or expecting reciprocation. I just needed you to understand where I stand, what you've come to mean to me. But the raw intensity burning in his gaze told me everything. His carefully chosen words hadn't: the longing, the hope, the fear of rejection, all swirling together in those expressive eyes. Something inside me made the decision before my rational mind could intervene. I instinctively stepped closer, entering what anyone observing would consider intimate space. Risky behavior in such a public environment, but I found myself unable to resist. What if I actually want you to demand something from me? The question emerged bolder than I'd intended. Victor's eyes widened dramatically, his breath catching audibly. Reid, are you genuinely saying, Papa? Reid, Alan's excited voice suddenly shattered the charged moment between us like glass breaking. We immediately separated to a more appropriate distance, but Victor's eyes refused to release mine, an unspoken promise lingering powerfully in that sustained look. A conversation we'd finish later. That evening, when Victor insisted on driving me home, he deliberately parked his car one full block away from my building. The street was quiet and dimly lit by sporadic street lamps, creating an atmosphere of privacy. I can't stop thinking about you constantly, he confessed while staring straight ahead through the windshield, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Victor, listen, just tell me honestly that I'm not alone in feeling this way. Please, I need to know. He wasn't alone. God, he was so far from alone in this. You're absolutely not alone, I whispered with complete sincerity. Victor finally turned to look directly at me, and raw emotion flooded his usually carefully controlled expression: vulnerability, desire, hope, and fear, all visible simultaneously. He began leaning closer with deliberate slowness, giving me every possible opportunity to pull away or stop what was clearly about to happen. But I didn't retreat even slightly. Tell me to stop right now, he murmured when his lips were mere inches from mine, his warm breath ghosting across my skin. Don't you dare stop. And then he kissed me, soft and tentative initially, as though testing boundaries, then gradually deeper and more confident as I responded enthusiastically. It represented a perfect combination of gentle tenderness and building passion. When we finally separated, both of us were breathless, slight smiles playing across our lips as we processed what had just occurred. I don't plan on letting you slip away from me easily, Victor whispered, his forehead coming to rest gently against mine in an intimate gesture. I'm absolutely counting on that, I replied honestly, my hand finding his. But the next morning arrived with devastating news that shattered our newfound happiness completely. Victor's ex-wife Vanessa, Alan's biological mother who had abandoned them years ago, had unexpectedly returned without warning. A legal notice had been filed. She was challenging for custody. The entire game had changed in an instant, transforming from building something beautiful to fighting desperately to protect what we'd found. When Victor called me that morning, the panic in his normally composed voice was impossible to miss. This was no longer just about our relationship developing naturally. This was about survival, about keeping our unconventional family intact against external threats. I rushed to his penthouse immediately, finding Alan drawing quietly while Victor paced like a caged animal, legal documents scattered across every surface. The fear in Victor's eyes when he looked at me was palpable. Fear of losing his son, fear of losing what we'd just begun building together, fear that everything he'd worked so hard to create would crumble. I knew in that moment that whatever came next, whatever legal battles or public scrutiny we'd face, I wasn't going anywhere. Victor and Alan had become my family too, and I would fight just as fiercely to protect them as Victor would. This was no longer just his battle. It was ours together. Victor's call came at precisely 6:30 in the morning, jolting me from restless sleep. Reid, I need you here right now. The panic was unmistakably evident in his normally composed and controlled voice. I immediately grabbed my keys without bothering to change from my pajamas and rushed through empty morning streets to his penthouse. When I arrived, Alan sat on the couch quietly working with colored pencils, creating drawings with unusual silence, clearly sensing the heavy tension permeating the apartment. Victor was pacing frantically in the living room, legal documents scattered chaotically across the coffee table, his phone pressed firmly to his ear as he argued intensely with his lawyer. The moment he noticed my arrival, he abruptly ended the call and practically collapsed onto the sofa, his entire body sagging with exhaustion and stress. "What's happened? Tell me everything," I asked gently, settling beside him and placing a steadying hand on his trembling shoulder. "Vanessa has returned after 3 years of complete absence. She's filed for joint custody, suddenly claiming she's finally ready to be a proper mother again." The bitterness and fear were equally mixed in his strained tone. My heart sank heavily at this news. Is she legally able to do that after abandoning him? Victor ran his hand through his already disheveled hair in visible frustration. Unfortunately, yes. She never formally relinquished her parental rights through proper legal channels. She simply vanished without a trace. Now suddenly she's financially stable with proof of steady income, recently remarried to someone respectable, and wants Alan integrated back into her new life. His voice cracked slightly on the last words. "My lawyer says there's a court hearing scheduled for next month. They'll thoroughly evaluate both living environments and parenting capabilities." I spoke cautiously, trying to offer reassurance. "Victor, you've single-handedly raised Alan from infancy. Any reasonable court will clearly see that level of dedication and sacrifice. But what if they favor the traditional complete family narrative she can now offer?" His voice cracked more noticeably, raw vulnerability showing through. "What if they decide Alan needs a conventional mother figure that I can't provide?" I firmly grabbed both his shoulders, physically forcing him to maintain eye contact with me. "Listen carefully to what I'm saying. You are an extraordinary father in every possible way. Alan absolutely adores you, and anyone can see that bond. I'm standing with you through every single step of this process. We'll face this challenge together, not separately." Victor stared intensely at me, his eyes glistening with unshed tears threatening to spill over. "Why would you willingly involve yourself in this mess? This isn't your legal responsibility or obligation. You're voluntarily stepping into a complicated situation that could—" I cut him off firmly, "because I care deeply about both of you. This is my conscious choice made freely." Victor pulled me into a desperate, clinging embrace, tight and seeking an anchor in the storm. "I cannot lose him, Reed, and I can't lose you either. Not now." My response was fierce and unwavering. "You won't lose either of us. I absolutely promise you that." The following weeks brought an increasingly tense atmosphere that permeated every moment. Vanessa's lawyer employed aggressive tactics designed to undermine Victor's credibility. They claimed Victor provided an unstable environment, specifically because he frequently brought an unverified stranger, meaning me, around his impressionable young son. Court dates multiplied rapidly, each one requiring extensive preparation. Legal consultations proved emotionally and physically exhausting for everyone involved. Victor barely slept anymore, constantly reviewing documents until dawn, preparing detailed statements, gathering evidence of his exemplary parenting. One particularly difficult night, Alan suddenly threw an emotional crying fit that broke my heart. "I don't want a new mother. I don't even know her. Why can't everything just stay exactly the same as it is now?" I held him close, rocking gently, trying to console his genuine distress. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Victor experienced a complete emotional breakdown. He slid down against the wall until he sat crumpled on the floor, hands covering his face entirely, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I'm failing him catastrophically. Everything is spinning completely out of my control and I can't stop it. His anguish was palpable and heartbreaking. I immediately knelt directly in front of him, gently removing his hands from his tear-stained face. "Look at me right now. You are genuinely the best father Alan could possibly have. You've given him unconditional love every single day of his life. That foundation will always matter most, regardless of what any court decides. But what if the court doesn't see things that way?" Tears now openly streamed down his face. a rare display of complete vulnerability from someone usually so controlled. I carefully cupped his face with both hands, my thumbs wiping away the steady stream of tears. Then we fight even harder than before. We present stronger evidence, gather more witnesses, document everything meticulously. I'll provide testimony if that's what's needed. I'm not abandoning you through this nightmare. Victor kissed me then, desperately, hungrily, the kiss filled with unspoken fears, gratitude and need for connection. That long night we held each other with fierce intensity, both fully aware the upcoming battle would be brutal and potentially devastating. But we had each other now, and that made all the difference. The legal preparation consumed our lives entirely for weeks. We compiled extensive photo albums documenting Alan's childhood, gathered testimonials from teachers praising Victor's involvement, obtained medical records showing consistent, attentive care. Every free moment was spent building our case, strengthening our defense. I found myself becoming deeply integrated into their daily routine, helping Alan with homework while Victor met with lawyers, cooking dinner so Victor could review legal briefs, providing emotional support during his darkest moments of doubt. Alan seemed to sense the gravity of the situation despite our attempts to shield him. He became more clingy, often sleeping between us when nightmares woke him. "You won't leave like she did, right, Reed?" he asked me one evening with heartbreaking innocence. "Never," I promised solemnly, meaning it with every fiber of my being. "I'm here for as long as you both want me." Victor overheard this exchange from the doorway, and when Alan finally fell asleep, he pulled me into another room. "I meant what I said before," he whispered intensely. "I love you, Reed, completely and without reservation." Those words, spoken in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, somehow meant even more than they would have during peaceful times. "I love you too," I responded with equal conviction. "We're going to get through this together." As the court date approached, the tension reached nearly unbearable levels, but our resolve never wavered. Whatever happened, we were facing it as a united front, a family in every way that truly mattered. The courthouse atmosphere felt suffocating despite the building's spacious design. Victor appeared impeccably dressed in a formal charcoal suit, clearly attempting to maintain composure, but I could easily notice his clenched jaw and fingers tapping nervously against his thigh. Alan had been deliberately kept at school to shield him from the courtroom's stressful environment. At least initially, Vanessa made her entrance wearing an elegant designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her hair professionally styled to perfection, sporting a carefully practiced sympathetic expression that seemed coached by expensive legal counsel. She took the stand first, her testimony rehearsed to emotional precision. "I fully acknowledge making terrible mistakes in the past," she told the judge with manufactured tears glistening in her eyes. "But I've genuinely changed through extensive therapy and personal growth. I have a stable marriage now, verified financial security, and a proper home environment. I'm his biological mother. Surely I deserve a legitimate opportunity to rebuild our relationship." Her performance was admittedly convincing to anyone who didn't know the true history. Victor's lawyer countered systematically and methodically, presenting a documented timeline of her complete abandonment, financial records conclusively proving Victor had solely supported Alan without any assistance whatsoever, and school reports clearly showing remarkable stability and excellent developmental progress under Victor's dedicated care. Then the judge posed the pivotal question that would change everything. Has the child himself expressed any clear preference regarding custody arrangements? The courtroom fell into tense silence. Alan was gently brought into the formal courtroom setting, and my heart completely shattered seeing his nervous face and small hands fidgeting anxiously with the hem of his shirt. But despite his obvious fear, he stood bravely before the intimidating judge. "Alan," the judge asked with genuine kindness in her tone, "where would you feel happiest and safest living?" Alan's response came clearly and confidently, without any hesitation: "With my dad. Always with my dad. And with Reed too." Immediate murmurs erupted throughout the courtroom at this unexpected addition. The judge raised an intrigued eyebrow, her interest visibly piqued. "Who exactly is Reed in this situation?" Victor's lawyer professionally explained my role, describing me as a close family friend who had become consistently positive influence, an integral part of Alan's established support system, someone who provided stability and care. Vanessa's lawyer predictably attempted to discredit my involvement, openly questioning my true intentions and suggesting inappropriate motivations. But Alan passionately interrupted before anyone could silence him. Reed saved me from bullies at the park when nobody else was there. He helps me with my homework every single night. He makes my dad smile again when he's sad. The judge carefully noted everything in her official records, occasionally glancing between Victor sitting rigidly at the defendant's table and me positioned in the gallery, trying to remain inconspicuous. Following Alan's testimony, several character witnesses took the stand. Alan's pediatrician testified about Victor's exemplary attentiveness to medical needs. His teacher spoke glowingly about parental involvement in school activities. Even neighbors provided statements about observing Victor's devoted parenting. The proceedings stretched for exhausting hours, each side presenting arguments and counter-arguments. Finally, the judge called for a recess to review all submitted evidence before making her final determination. The weeks of agonizing waiting that followed were absolutely torturous. Every phone call made our hearts race with anticipation and dread. Victor barely functioned, going through motions at work while his mind remained consumed with possible outcomes. Then finally, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the call came. Victor's phone rang while we were having lunch with Alan, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. His hand trembled as he answered, listening intently while his face remained unreadable. When he finally ended the call, he seemed frozen in shock for several long seconds. "Victor?" I prompted anxiously. "What did they say?" He looked up at me with eyes suddenly bright with overwhelming emotion. "Primary custody has been awarded to me. Full and complete." His voice cracked with relief and disbelief. "Vanessa receives only supervised visitation rights, limited to twice monthly under professional observation." The phone nearly slipped from his shaking hands as he immediately pulled me into a crushing embrace. "We won. Dear God, Reed. We actually won." Alan began cheering enthusiastically, jumping up and down with pure childhood joy, not fully understanding the legal complexities but recognizing this meant his world would remain intact and unchanged. That evening's celebration remained quiet, but profoundly meaningful. We ordered Alan's favorite pizza with extra cheese, watched his preferred animated movies, and eventually Alan fell contentedly asleep, stretched across the couch between us, a peaceful smile on his face. Victor and I carefully transferred his sleeping form to his bedroom, tucking him in gently before stepping out onto the penthouse terrace. The city lights created a shimmering tapestry far below us, countless lives unfolding in those illuminated windows. "Thank you for everything you've done," Victor whispered while standing close enough that our arms brushed together. "Your testimony made a critical difference in the judge's decision." I simply told the honest truth about what I've observed. I deflected modestly. "You did significantly more than that." He carefully took my hand, deliberately intertwining our fingers together in an intimate gesture. "You're absolutely perfect for both Alan and me. I want this to become official, permanent." He turned to face me fully, his expression mixing nervousness with determined resolve. "Reed, would you seriously consider moving in with us? Making this arrangement permanent rather than temporary?" My breath caught completely in my throat, the question more significant than I'd anticipated. "You're genuinely serious about this?" "Completely and absolutely serious. Alan loves you deeply. And he paused briefly, gathering courage for what came next. "I love you, Reed. Truly and completely." Unexpected tears pricked at my eyes at hearing those words spoken so openly. "I love you too, Victor. More than I thought possible." This time I initiated the kiss, soft and tender, filled with promises about future possibilities we could now actually pursue. The following months brought a surprisingly smooth transition into our new living arrangement. I officially moved into the penthouse, merging my modest belongings with their established household. Alan began naturally calling me Papa Reed without any prompting or discussion, as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. Victor demonstrated daily through countless small gestures, preparing my morning coffee exactly how I preferred it, leaving gentle forehead kisses before heading to early meetings, naturally sharing household responsibilities that this partnership was genuine and lasting. 1 year later, during another school event, a teacher automatically referred to me as Alan's other parent while discussing his progress. Alan immediately and proudly corrected her with a beaming smile, That's my Papa Reed. Victor squeezed my hand firmly under the table, and I noticed his eyes, once constantly tired and burdened, now sparkled with contentment and peace. What had started unexpectedly in a park while rescuing a frightened child from bullies had transformed into something complete, beautiful, and chaotic. A real family built on love, choice, and commitment rather than just biology. And honestly, I wouldn't change a single moment of our complicated, wonderful journey together. This was home. This was family. This was exactly where I belong.